I never thought that a canceled vacation would end up being the moment my son broke my trust for good. I was tightening the strap on my travel bag when Marcus walked into the kitchen, his laptop tucked under his arm like always, that fake hurried look on his face. "Mama," he said, not even sitting down. "We need to cancel our trip. Too much work left to do." He didn't flinch, didn't soften it. Just stood there, still in his pressed shirt like he hadn't unpacked himself all the way from wherever Simone sent him that morning. I froze with my hand on the zipper. "Of course, baby," I said. "Don't worry about me." Even though I'd prepaid the resort, booked the shuttle to the pier, stocked up on the arthritis cream that works better than any beach chair ever could. This was April 29th, a date I had circled on the fridge calendar for nearly 8 months. That trip was more than just a vacation. It was my line in the sand, the thing I'd held on to through 6 months of post-surgery pain and lonely evenings reheating casseroles I couldn't taste. Coral Winds had a saltwater pool with a lift chair. I called ahead to confirm. They said yes, ma'am, twice. I imagined floating in silence, no schedules, just me and the boy I raised, side by side, with nothing to do but breathe and remember we were still family. Instead, I stood there while he mumbled something about pushing a deadline, kissed my cheek without looking at me, and left before I could ask what project mattered more than peace. He didn't even ask if I'd be all right alone. After he left, I emptied the sunblock into the bathroom drawer and set the wide-brimmed straw hat back on the shelf in the hall closet. I shut the suitcase slowly, like maybe if I moved soft enough, I wouldn't feel the bruise blooming in my chest. I made a sandwich I didn't finish. I sat down and turned on the travel show I'd recorded for weeks, but the beach didn't look like rest anymore. It looked like a joke I didn't get. And the worst part? I believed him. That's what stays in my throat even now. I'm Gloria Patrice Evans, 66, retired librarian, and I thought I had earned more than silence and excuses. The Monday after the cancellation, I sat down at my kitchen table, the same one I bought secondhand in, 87 after my divorce, and looked around at everything I'd kept standing. I ran that house on discipline, double shifts, and careful lists. Every bill paid on time, every holiday dinner prepped like a military operation. I'd scrubbed crayon off these walls, cried over late-night lesson plans, kept our lights on through 3 recessions and a partial government shutdown. I raised Marcus on my own, never took a man back after his daddy left. People said I was hard, but I was just tired of betting on charm. I gave that boy the best of me. Woke him every school morning at 6:15 sharp, drove the same battered Corolla for 12 years so he could wear new cleats and join the science club. Read every book he brought home, sat in the front row at every spelling bee, even when he lost to apprehension in 5th grade, and cried into my lap in the parking lot. Now, I live in a modest 2-bedroom in Pine Grove, near the library where I worked 34 years. I keep my porch swept, my fridge full, and my credit above 780. My hips don't let me kneel for long, but I can still weed the flower beds and back out of the driveway without touching the curb. I'm not rich, but I know how to stretch a pension. My life is quiet, but it's mine. That trip to Coral Winds was supposed to be a bookmark, a soft page I could open and breathe into. After the surgery last fall, I told myself that once I could walk unassisted, I'd do something just for me. And I wanted Marcus with me, not out of guilt, but because I missed my son, the one who used to dance to Earth, Wind, and Fire with me in the living room. But instead of peace, I got a blank space on the calendar and a silence that stung. It wasn't just the trip, it was the feeling that I'd become convenient. Background. And I felt it in my bones. Something had shifted, and not in my favor. This wasn't the first time Marcus let me down for Simone's family, but it was the first time I couldn't pretend it didn't hurt. 2 Christmases ago, I roasted a hen and basted it twice, then waited in my holiday sweater until 7:40 p.m. before Marcus called to say they'd decided to stay at the Whitaker's Lake House in Tallahassee last minute. Said the fire was going, and Simone's daddy had caught fresh trout. I smiled into the phone and told him not to worry about the food, lied and said I'd frozen it already. After we hung up, I sat at the table and ate one drumstick and a spoonful of greens with the tree lights still blinking. I remember folding the tablecloth that night like it was skin I didn't need anymore. Then last month, my birthday brunch came and went, without so much as a card. He texted an hour after the reservation. "Sorry, Mama. Got caught up at Simone's mom's book club. She made gumbo." No punctuation. Not even a picture. I scrolled back to last year's birthday. The same gumbo. The same caught up. I kept telling myself marriage meant compromise. That it was good he got along with her parents. That I'd raised a man who knew how to honor a wife. But that voice in my gut, the one I silenced in favor of being gracious, kept noting the pattern. He wasn't caught up. He was choosing. Over and over, and not once in my direction. I had always told myself that once he had a family, I'd step back, let him lead his life. That's what good mothers do, right? We clear the runway, even if it means watching them fly somewhere we're not invited. But now, every choice felt like erasure. Every skipped holiday, every excuse tied to Simone's people, it all added up to the same equation. I was optional. And still, I let the canceled trip slide. Told myself he was tired. Told myself maybe next month we'd go somewhere closer, somewhere easy. I even looked up spa days in Daytona. That's how far I bent. I was still trying to meet him halfway, even when the map showed he'd turned the car in the other direction. That same evening, I told Dolores what Marcus said, and the look on her face held more truth than I was ready to hear. Dolores and I have sung alto side by side in the Zion Hill Choir for almost 20 years, but our real harmonies happen over coffee. That night, she came by with banana pudding in a Tupperware and sat down like she'd been waiting for the call. I told her about the cancellation, how Marcus had dropped the news like a cold dish, how I'd smiled through it, and I saw her mouth tighten before she even picked up her spoon. "He say why exactly?" she asked, not blinking. "Work stuff." "Some client deadline," I said, waving it off like I believed it. But I didn't. She nodded slow. "Boys lie in patterns, Glow. Not all boys, but yours? I've been watching." She said it soft, not cruel, but clear enough that my stomach flipped. "And Simone's people? They got claim over that boy like they paid for the ink on his birth certificate." I laughed a little too hard at that, trying to deflect. "You think he's just, what, swayed?" "I think," she said, leaning forward, "that you gave and gave and gave, and now they treat you like a button they can press when it's useful." I sat back, stunned by how close that hit. I'd always chalked things up to growing pains, newlywed priorities, but Dolores had been watching the whole time, and not once had she seen reciprocity. Just a cycle, me offering, them taking. "Have you checked your card?" she asked suddenly. "If you prepaid that trip, did the charge ever reverse?" That stopped me. I hadn't. I trusted Marcus. Or maybe I didn't want to confirm what my gut already suspected. Dolores didn't push. She just placed the pudding in my fridge and kissed my forehead on the way out. But as she stood in the doorway, she turned and said, "Some truths you don't need to chase. They wait for you to stand still long enough." I trusted Marcus because I built his life with my bare hands, one sacrifice at a time, and I never asked him to pay me back. Until now. The screen glowed while I waited for the charges to load. I didn't want to look. Not really. That account had always felt like an extension of my generosity, not something to police. But Dolores's voice stayed in my head, steady and sharp. I scrolled past grocery runs and gas fill-ups, past a birthday gift I sent to Simone's niece, and there it was. The resort name, sitting bold and unbothered like it belonged. I didn't click yet. My hands were sweating. Instead, I reached for the little green notebook in the drawer under the microwave, the one I used to track school fees and lunch deposits, back when every dollar counted. It still held the numbers I never said out loud. I flipped through pages. Marcus's tuition at Florida A&M, $39,672 over 4 years, paid in chunks from my paycheck, and 2 loans I didn't finish paying off until I was 59. The $4,000 check I handed him and Simone for their down payment, wrapped in a Hallmark card with a gold house on it. The Costco card I added him to, just for emergencies. which had quietly racked up over $900 in bulk snacks and backyard supplies. There was no resentment when I gave these things. That's what burned the most. I did it because I believed in what we were building. That I was investing in the next chapter, his chapter, with pride, not pity. I never kept receipts because mothers aren't supposed to. We're supposed to love without ledgers. But now the math felt different. The numbers weren't a gift anymore. They were a record of how easily I'd been replaced. I clicked the Coral Winds charge. $3,219. Pending. Booked the day after Marcus canceled on me. The first flicker of suspicion came when I saw the Coral Winds charge sitting in limbo. But I still reached for excuses instead of the truth. Maybe it was a mistake, I told myself. Maybe the charge was old, an automatic hold from the booking we'd canceled. I reread the statement 3 times, squinting at the date like my eyes could rewrite it. It said May 2nd. I checked the calendar. That was 3 days after Marcus said we'd postpone our trip. 3 days after he kissed my cheek and told me not to worry. Still, I turned the thought over, like a smooth stone in my hand. Maybe he had to cancel through a different site. Maybe they processed the refund differently. I even wondered if he had called the resort and asked them to keep the trip open for later. Hope makes you foolish. I told myself every story except the one Dolores had already dared to suggest. That I'd been lied to cleanly, calmly, and with intent. I called the Coral Winds customer service line that afternoon. Not to accuse, just to ask. Just to hear a voice that might tell me I was wrong. The woman who answered was chipper, overly polite. Said her name was Macy. I gave her the date, the confirmation number, and asked if she could check the status. She put me on hold for a full 2 minutes. Then, she came back all smiles. Looks like the reservation is active. Mr. Marcus Evans checking in June 12th through the 18th. We have 4 guests listed. Himself, a Mrs. Evans, and 2 Whitakers. Looks like everything's good to go. My heart kicked twice, hard. I nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry, I said. Can you confirm the name on the card used? Sure. Gloria P. Evans, that's you, I assume? Yes, I managed to say, but my voice felt far away. Well, you're all set then, she said. No, I wasn't. I ended the call and sat still at the edge of my bed. The air around me tightened. It wasn't a flicker anymore. It was a flame. But the charge cleared, dated for June 12 to 18, same dates as our original booking, and the resort manager confirmed every detail I didn't want to hear. I called back the next morning, not for answers. I already had those, but to make sure there'd be a record. I asked for the manager this time. She sounded younger, maybe mid-30s, brisk but polite. Yes, Ms. Evans, she said after I gave her the reference code. Reservations confirmed. We're expecting Mr. Marcus Evans and party. 4 guests, deluxe suite, ocean view, 2 queen beds, and a rollaway. She rattled it off like it was nothing. And you're sure, I said slowly, that this was paid with my card? Correct. Final charge cleared as of May 3rd. You're the primary on the account, she said. If there's an issue, I can flag it or issue a cancellation, but we'd need to hear from you directly. I told her I was ready to cancel. I said it steady. Please remove my card, cancel the reservation, and note that it was used without authorization. Also, mark my name for internal fraud alert. I won't be liable for any future bookings. There was a pause, maybe surprise, maybe discomfort. Of course, she said. We'll send confirmation shortly and mark the profile. I'm sorry that happened. I thanked her and hung up. My hands didn't shake this time. I stared at the counter, at the clean row of coffee mugs under the cabinet. I could see the outline of the one Marcus bought me on Mother's Day 5 years ago. Navy blue with a faded #1 mom in silver. I picked it up, turned it once in my palm, and set it in the back of the cabinet behind the travel mugs. Out of sight. It was deliberate. He didn't forget to cancel the trip. He rerouted it. Same dates, same rooms, but now his wife's parents had my view, my ocean air, my suite. And the part that burned deepest? He didn't think I'd notice. Or worse, he didn't think I'd do anything if I did. He was about to learn otherwise. I felt my face flush and hands tremble when I realized they had used my card to rebook the exact trip he told me was canceled, so I canceled the reservation myself, and told the resort to flag my name for fraud alert. After the call, I printed the confirmation email and laid it flat on the kitchen table. There it was in black and white, Marcus Evans, guest of record, June 12 to 18. No trace of my name, except under billing. The audacity was clinical. No apology tucked inside, no error message to explain it away. Just a quiet, professional receipt of betrayal. I'd raised him, to be honest, careful. I taught him to call when he was going to be late, to hold the door, to look people in the eye. That boy used to stand on a stool to help me stir Sunday gravy and say, "We're a team, right, Mama?" Now here he was, using my retirement card to buy a vacation and hand it to Simone's people like a party favor. I went back to the resort's website and filled out their fraud affidavit, attaching my driver's license and noting that I'd neither approved the stay nor authorized any guests. I called my bank too, filed an initial dispute, and asked to freeze the card before another charge could hit. They said a formal investigation would open within 2 business days. I asked the representative to note, "Cardholder did not authorize use by family." Her voice softened when she read it back to me. Then I sat down at the dining table, pulled out a yellow legal pad and drew 3 columns. Date, amount, purpose. I began listing every major support I'd given since the wedding. Each line sharpened something in me. $2,500 for their honeymoon flights, $600 for Simone's dress alterations, $300 in last-minute catering upgrades I covered without question. The pen moved faster than my anger. When I finished the page, I added one more line at the bottom, circled in red. "This stops today." When Marcus texted me 2 days later with a casual, "Just checking on you, Mama," I didn't respond, and soon Simone sent a vague message saying, "We hope you're not upset," as if I hadn't just discovered they'd stolen a vacation from me. I read Marcus's message 3 times before I deleted the preview from my screen. No apology, no mention of Clearwater, Coral Winds, or the charge with my name on it, just checking on you. Like, we were still pretending, like nothing had shifted, like I hadn't seen his name linked to my card and my canceled piece. The nerve to check on me with a tone so flat, like he was clocking a chore off his list, made something hard settle behind my ribs. And then, half a day later, Simone's message came. "We hope you're not upset," she wrote, like I was being irrational for withdrawing after being robbed of my time, my money, my dignity. They weren't confused. They were managing me. That's when I knew. This wasn't a miscommunication or a forgotten conversation. They hadn't expected me to find out. Or maybe they didn't care if I did. Either way, they thought I'd stay silent, that I'd do what I always did, smooth it over, make myself small, tell myself it wasn't worth the trouble. But I was done being predictable. I didn't answer either of them. I didn't owe them clarity when they'd offered me none. Instead, I went into my text thread with Marcus, scrolled back to last October, the week he asked me to help cover the replacement fence panels after the storm, and took a screenshot of the $438 Venmo transfer. I dropped it in a folder I'd started on my desktop called Evan's Reckoning. I wasn't sure yet what I'd do with all of it, but I knew this time I needed a record, a paper trail of the pattern. I deleted their messages, not to erase, but to preserve my own energy. I didn't want to reread their gaslighting while I was still building my response. At 4 a.m. the next morning, I sat in my living room chair in silence, then whispered to myself, "No more." As I took out my bank folders, opened my legal pad, and wrote a list titled, "What I Gave," "What I Owed," "What I'll Never Give Again." I couldn't sleep. My body was tired, but my mind kept spinning in cold, clear circles. Every lie, every shrug, every time I told myself, it's just how young people are now. At 3:52 a.m., I stopped lying. I sat up, turned on the lamp beside the armchair, and reached for the bottom drawer of the file cabinet. That drawer held my mortgage payoff letter, the birth certificate I'd once used to get Marcus into school early, and every tax return since 2006. I pulled out the folders with his name on them. Inside, bank statements with my card number beside purchases I never made. Plane tickets to Simone's sister's engagement party, $612 round trip. A hotel in Asheville last fall, $483, Charged the same week, Marcus told me he'd had an unexpected work trip. I'd covered it, not knowing I was funding someone else's family reunion. I stapled every receipt to a blank sheet and wrote the date and purpose. Not for drama, for proof. I opened the Wells Fargo app, removed Marcus as an authorized user, filed a fraud report on the Coral Winds charge, froze the account, and transferred all my savings to a fresh account at ViStar with new two-factor authentication. It took 12 minutes. Not rage, not revenge, just 12 calm, decisive minutes. I logged in, went to Manage Authorized Users, and clicked the red X beside Marcus's name. The site asked, "Are you sure?" Like it knew what that button really meant. I didn't hesitate. Yes, I was sure. Then I filed the fraud claim, selected the Coral Winds charge, typed in a short statement. Card used without consent by adult son. Request reversal and permanent removal from account access. Attached a scan of my license and the resort cancellation receipt. The app said I'd hear back within 3 business days. That wasn't fast enough, so I froze the card immediately, then clicked into my savings and transferred every cent, $28,403, to a new ViStar account I'd opened online that morning. Chose new security questions. One of them asked, "Who was your childhood best friend?" And I typed me, because from now on I was done outsourcing my safety. Then I did one more thing. I printed out the balance sheet I'd started and placed it inside a manila folder. On the front, I wrote Evans Financial Closed Access in thick black marker. I slid it into my fireproof lockbox behind the birth certificates. That box used to hold everything I'd pass on. Now it held the things I'd taken back. I didn't feel powerful. I felt clean. Like I'd finally stopped watering a dead plant just because I'd once planted it with love. When I logged out, I checked my texts. Still nothing real from Marcus. Still silence dressed up as patience. They were waiting for me to soften, to explain my reaction like it needed defending. But they were waiting for someone who didn't live here anymore. I gathered every receipt, from tuition payments to bridal shower invoices to digital transfer logs from Venmo. $16,824 in total since their wedding, and backed it all up to a cloud folder titled Evans Reckoning. I started with the big things: the wire for the honeymoon flights, the tuition payments, the transfer I made when their air conditioner went out mid-July, and they were between paychecks. I pulled emails, bank statements, even old texts where Marcus sent a heart emoji after I covered another unexpected bill. It added up faster than I expected. But I didn't stop there. I opened Cash App, scrolled through Venmo, checked my Zelle history. Grocery runs, registry gifts, baby shower leftovers I paid to ship when Simone said she didn't want her mom to worry. All of it. Mine. I wasn't collecting it to make a point. I was collecting it because I finally understood. I had spent years solving their shortfalls while mine piled up in silence. That kind of help doesn't get you honored. It gets used. I uploaded everything into a secure drive, gave it a name that made my hand steady when I typed it Evans Reckoning. I didn't plan to wave it in anyone's face, but if they ever tried to twist the story, say I'd abandoned them, turned cold for no reason, they'd find every fact waiting, stamped, and dated. Last to go in was the Coral Winds confirmation, still showing Marcus's name and Simone's parents listed as guests. No edits, no doubt. That was the receipt that turned the tide, $16,824. And they still thought I'd keep giving. I called Dolores, who looped in her son Tyrone, a junior attorney at her firm, who agreed to draft a revocation of financial support letter and help me update my estate plan to remove Marcus as co-beneficiary. Dolores picked up on the first ring. She didn't ask how I was. She already knew. I told her I'd canceled the trip, shut down the account, and started collecting proof. She didn't say, "Good for you," or "I told you so." Instead, she said, "It's time we make it official." That afternoon, her son Tyrone met me at his office downtown. Young, polished, quiet, but the kind of quiet that knows exactly what it's doing. He read through my notes, skimmed the receipts, nodded once when I slid the Coral Winds confirmation across the table. Then he pulled out a template, and the words started to take shape on real paper. I didn't expect how it would feel to say it aloud, I want to revoke any and all financial support for Marcus Evans, effective immediately. Tyrone paused, looked up at me, and asked, "Do you want to include a reason?" I shook my head. "No, just facts. Let the numbers speak." He nodded again, adjusted the phrasing. By the end of the hour, the letter read clean, sharp, and final. It listed what I'd paid, what I was owed, and what I was no longer responsible for. No bitterness. No emotion. Just closure in black ink. Tyrone said once it was signed and notarized, I'd have legal documentation if they ever tried to press or guilt or twist the story. But I wasn't done yet. I looked at him and said, "I want to update my estate plan too. Marcus is off as co-beneficiary. I want full control back." His pen didn't hesitate. He asked me a few simple questions, then slid over a form. I initialed each section, signed my name with a hand steadier than it had been in weeks. By the time I left that office, the air felt different in my lungs. Not lighter, exactly, but clearer, like the boundary had finally been built in stone, not just in my head. I mailed the notarized letter to Marcus and Simone, listing each transaction, revoking all financial access effective immediately, and including a final line. This is not punishment. This is protection. I walked to the post office just before noon, while the line was short and the lobby still quiet. The envelope was thick, 6 pages, neatly printed, notarized at Tyrone's office that morning. The clerk asked if I wanted tracking. I said yes, certified with return receipt. I wanted proof. Not that I'd sent it, but that they'd held it in their hands. Inside the envelope, a letter that started without a greeting. "No, dear Marcus." No softness to ease them in. Just a direct statement of revocation, of access, of financial dependence, of my silence. I itemized everything I'd covered since their engagement. Dates, amounts, reasons. $4,000 for the down payment. $2,800 for their honeymoon. Reimbursements that never came. "These were gifts given freely," I wrote. "But your recent actions have made it clear that continued support is being assumed, not appreciated." Then came the final paragraph. I read it aloud before sealing the envelope to make sure it said exactly what I needed it to. This is not punishment. This is protection. I am no longer in a position, legally, emotionally, or financially, to fund your choices, cover your gaps, or remain silent while being disrespected. All access is revoked, effective immediately. No threats, no guilt, just fact. I dropped the envelope into the blue box outside, then stood still a moment longer than I needed to. Not because I was unsure, but because I knew the moment it left my hand, a part of my motherhood, at least the version they'd come to expect, was officially closed. Back home, I wrote the tracking number on a sticky note and placed it inside the front cover of my ledger. Then I turned the page, dated the top, and wrote 2 words. Next steps. Because there would be pushback. I wasn't naive. But now I had documentation, legal footing, and a spine no longer bent toward pleasing. Let them open that envelope and read what I've been too generous to say aloud. I am done being their safety net. Within 24 hours, I had 99 plus missed calls and texts from Marcus, Simone, and Simone's mama, claiming I'd embarrassed them, overreacted, and disrespected family boundaries, as if theft was just a misunderstanding. The call started before sunrise. First Marcus, then Simone, then a number I didn't recognize but knew belonged to her mother. Voicemails stacked up like trash in a windstorm. Not one of them said sorry. Instead, I heard words like confused, hurt, and the one they all clung to, disappointed. They weren't ashamed of what they did. They were ashamed that I'd named it. Marcus's message stung the most. "Mama, why would you bring lawyers into this? It wasn't that deep. We were going to pay you back." I paused the recording halfway through, not because it upset me, but because it insulted my intelligence. If they meant to pay me back, they would have asked before booking, and they wouldn't have tried to hide it. Simone's tone was colder. "We don't understand this aggressive stance. It's not healthy to let money come between family." As if money had broken something, not manipulation. And then her mother, "Gloria, I always thought you were better than this." This is a private matter, and now it feels like you're creating distance that can't be undone." That part almost made me laugh, as if distance was the problem now, as if I hadn't already been pushed to the margins one vacation, one forgotten holiday at a time. I didn't respond. I logged every call, saved every message, took screenshots of the timestamps. Tyrone had already warned me. They'd twist tone, weaponize language, try to flip the story to make me the unreasonable one. But I had my records. More importantly, I had my peace. I attended our June 11th HOA meeting at the Pine Grove Community Center and requested 5 minutes during open floor, where I stood up, looked Marcus dead in the eye across the folding chairs, and calmly laid out what had been taken from me. He wasn't expecting to see me there. I watched the shift in his jaw when he walked in. First, tight surprise, then that glazed look he wears when he's calculating how to spin things. He sat 2 rows back, flanked by Simone and her mother. They looked polished, coordinated, like this was another social errand to manage. But I'd come prepared. When the floor opened for community remarks, I stood and walked to the front, folder in hand. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't use a single word they could call emotional. Just facts. My name is Gloria Evans. I'm a homeowner on Rosewood Lane. I'm also the person whose financial accounts were used, without consent, to fund a private vacation under false pretenses. A few murmurs, nothing loud. Most folks didn't know. Now they did. I opened the folder, held up the Coral Winds invoice with the guest names clearly visible. This reservation was made using my credit card after I was told the trip was canceled. I held up the bank statement next. Here's the charge. And here, I said, tapping the paper, is the fraud case number opened with Wells Fargo. I didn't name Marcus. I didn't have to. Every eye in that room followed mine when I turned to face him. This is not about family disputes, I said. This is about boundaries, about accountability, and about the cost, literal and emotional, of being taken for granted. Dolores sat near the back, nodding slow. She didn't need to say a word. Her presence was backup. Marcus didn't speak. Simone looked away. Her mother narrowed her eyes like I'd broken some invisible code. With the resort invoice projected on the screen, my Wells Fargo fraud case number read aloud, and Dolores nodding beside me with a thick manila folder, I asked one question. What kind of man lies to his mother and steals her peace? The projector clicked on with a soft hum, casting the numbers across the wall. I didn't need the display to prove anything. I'd already mailed the truth. But I wanted it said out loud, in a space where he couldn't hide behind texts or silence. Tyrone had helped me prepare the summary slide. Simple. Undeniable. The dates, the names, the dollar amounts. I read the case number once, clearly. Then I looked up at Marcus. You knew that trip was still booked. You knew I'd paid for it. And you let them put their feet up in a room I was supposed to rest in. He opened his mouth but said nothing. Maybe he was expecting a lecture, maybe a quiet scolding behind closed doors. But not this. Not a direct question with no safe answer. What kind of man does that? The room stayed silent. HOA members glanced between us, unsure where to look. Dolores didn't shift, didn't blink. Her folder was there just in case, but we didn't need it. The truth had done its job. After a long pause, Simone stood. This isn't the place, she said, voice sharp. This is a personal family matter. No, I said. It stopped being personal when my name was used like a passcode, and my silence became expected. Theft isn't private. It's public the second you swipe someone else's card. The room fell silent as Pastor Vaughn from Zion Hill, who was present as a witness, said, "That's not family, that's betrayal." And by week's end, Marcus was removed from my will, my card was reissued, my locks were changed, and I picked up my new keys with a gold tag that read mine again. Pastor didn't say it for applause, he said it like a line from scripture. Calm, final. No one clapped. No one had to. The silence that followed carried more weight than any shouting match ever could. That evening, I called Tyrone one last time, told him to file the final will revision, removing Marcus as a beneficiary and appointing the local food literacy nonprofit in his place. Make it official, I said. No loose ends. He didn't ask why. He already knew. The next morning, I stopped by the bank, picked up my new card with a fresh number, clean history, and no second names. I smiled at the woman who handed it to me. Just me this time, I said. Then I drove straight to the locksmith. Paid cash. New deadbolts, new entry code. When he finished, he handed me the keys in a small manila envelope. Inside was a tag. Gold, not fancy, but engraved in neat script. Mine again.